the CEO and co-founder of crypto trading software provider Shipyards Software, Mark Lurie. Mark, thank you for joining us. So you penned an opinion piece on CoinDesk about this titled Sweeping Crypto Regulation, First Update the Bank Secrecy Act. So maybe you can walk folks through what the Bank Secrecy Act actually is and how it's relevant to crypto.
Money laundering is bad. We can all agree. But how does the government prevent it, and is the approach obsolete since the inception of the Bank Secrecy Act in 1970? Let's find out what the game plan is for the modern age.
Hi, Christine. Well, thanks for having me. And hi, everyone. The Bank Secrecy Act is the primary means by which the U.S. prevents problematic usage of currencies in the U.S. banking system. It's been around for a while, and it includes things like the Patriot Act, which is more recent and many of us have heard about. The primary framework created is that of KYC. So financial intermediaries have to know who their customers are and identify them. They have to monitor transactions, and then they have to report those transactions to FinCEN. And most of regulation has to fit into this model. That's also promulgated through FATF, which is an international body which promulgates the same kind of guidelines around the world. The problem is that this wasn't written when crypto was around. And so it assumes that someone has to custody someone else's money. Now, with crypto, there's other ways to fulfill the purpose of the Bank Secrecy Act, which is preventing money laundering and preventing terrorist financing. Specifically, following the money itself through Know Your Transaction instead of Know Your Customer. The problem is that regulators have to actually adhere to the framework prescribed in the Bank Secrecy Act, which means they really have no choice except to implement KYC and transaction monitoring and reporting, even though that's an outdated way to accomplish a noble purpose. What we really need in order to have sensible crypto regulation is to rewrite the axiomatic law itself so that we can prevent bad actors while allowing this emerging crypto economy to grow.
So what do you think? Could this new regulation actually be good for the crypto world or not?
Yeah, you say that Know Your Customer, KYC for short, within decentralized finance is not only unnecessary but impossible. Why is that? And, potentially they could go after the on and off ramps of DeFi.
They could go after the on and off ramps, and arguably there should be KYC there, because in an on and off ramp, money has to go through a financial intermediary. And the BSA makes sense when there's a financial intermediary who's actually custodying your money. But once money is in crypto, there's no real way to stop it from going back and forth. Let's say that you required DeFi protocols or apps built on top of them to do KYC. Well, you just have a bunch of anonymous developers launching other DeFi, forking the protocols and launching those. And so you'd be playing whack-a-mole where you'd be enforcing regulation against one actor only to see 1,000 spring up doing the exact same thing. It's kind of like when the music industry tried to sue college students after Napster and file sharing came out. It's really a lost cause. And rather than have an unenforceable and thus impractical regulation, we should really rewrite things so we can accomplish the purpose for which the law was written in a way that is both practical and more effective.
Okay, so you think regulators should shift to KYT or Know Your Transaction. Tell us about that.
I think in the context of crypto and DeFi, it's just a more effective way to accomplish their goals, right? Instead of being limited to saying who's coming into the bank and seeing who they are, you can actually follow the money itself, see where it's come from, and see if it's tainted. The same reason, when you come into the airport at customs, they specifically don't necessarily ask for your information. Instead, they have dogs who sniff to see if you have cash. How do those dogs know that you have cash? because there's trace amounts of cocaine on a lot of cash. And so, in other words, it's a tactic to follow the money, and it's actually much less obtrusive and more effective than trying to do a background check on the individual themselves. That's possible in blockchain. And so it's just a more effective way for the regulators to accomplish the goals for which these agencies were set up. The problem is their hands are tied behind their back. They're only allowed to do it in one way, and that's what needs to change on the legislative level.
If crypto evolves too quickly for legislation to keep up, should they even bother trying?
And yet you also say the crypto space moves too fast for Congress, right? So even if they were to bring legislation, which would take years, crypto would have already evolved.
Well, that's true in some ways, not in others. I think because the agencies can only enact regulations that fit the existing legislative framework, they're caught between a rock and a hard place by creating rules that aren't really going to make sense anyways and take a lot of time to write, and enforcement by deterrence, where they're ambiguous about what they'll enforce, and so people just kind of stay far away from the line, but that also inhibits good behavior. If we change the legislative framework, it gives regulators more flexibility to put in rules that themselves are more flexible. And when you have more flexible, common sense rules, they tend to be the ones that last and are effective. So it's not that it's impossible to put good rules in place. It's just that you have to have the flexibility to do them in a way that can be adaptive and accommodate the new forms of technology that exist.
Well, Mark, we just have about 60 seconds on, but if you were to create some crypto comprehensive legislation to address DeFi and make it more consumer friendly and protective, what would that look like in a nutshell?
The first thing that really needs to happen, and inevitably will, is that we need to allow for regulators to follow the money instead of just checking the person. That means that we need to revise the Bank Secrecy Act, make it so you don't just have to do KYC, but you can do KYT, know your transaction, in the case where money is not going through a financial intermediary. That then can be the basis for practical, effective regulation that can accomplish the goals of society in the context of DeFi, which is preventing bad activity when there's no financial intermediary, while allowing for free development of markets in a way that benefits the economy as a whole. What we don't want to do is be moving around decks on the Titanic when the ground beneath us is not stable. We need to focus on the foundation, and ultimately we will. I just hope it's sooner rather than later.
So does it sound like more government overreach, or are we all still gravy? Let us know, and thanks for watching.